Hello, this is Dale Matthews, and I'm joined by Mike Jones here on Inside News. Hello, Mike.
Hello, Dale Matthews. Yes, Dale says, we're going to throw this to you because of this thing that you found. And to be honest, this thing that I found, this is nothing earth shattering. It's just that I get these real estate alert emails, and so because I've done a little bit of searching around at real estate in the area, it's my business. And
Mike, I got a question to ask you. This real estate alert, is it a real estate emergency?
Yeah, yes. Well, they would probably have you believe that, that's kind of like buy now. But that's not what it is. Anyway, so I go to this website and I'm looking at this piece of property, which is, something I've been looking at here for a couple of months anyway. And then I noticed something down, check out the crime in this area. So I click on it, and this is what I got. It's overall crime in this area is very low. And so I posted this, and I wasn't trying to post this like, see, this site says that the crime is very low in this area, because we already have better stats than this. This doesn't even, they have a rating system that 100 is the national average. Less than 100 is better than that. More than 100, of course, is more than that. And and so, pardon my coughing here. The allergies. This is what happens this time of season. My nose just starts running out one side or the other, and so I cough a little bit as a result. So this is not a great indicator of anything, but obviously they have to go to something in order to make a determination like this. And they don't care about Josephine County. They're doing this as a nationwide thing. And I'm sure that it's, something that happens as a matter of the software, and it just references your zip code in that particular area and tells you what the crime stats are. So it's not, this website isn't trying to lie to us about what the crime is in this area. The reaction that I got was, bunch of Levy Persher people coming in telling me, well, not a bunch of them, but a few, coming in, making excuses why this isn't the right, way to make a determination of the crime in this area, because I tell you, I've been here for so many years and the crime is so much more than it was. And then I post the stats from 2004 to 2014, which kind of show the opposite of that. And I'm trying to make a determination as to how are these people getting this impression that there's more crime? Are they witnessing enough crime to say, well, I have seen this much crime, therefore I know the statistic is wrong? I don't know how you would do that. You would have to witness all of the crime and go, well, I witnessed all of the crime in 2013 and all of the crime in 2014, and 2014 was higher. That's the sort of perspective that you would have in order to say that the statistics are somehow wrong. But it doesn't stop these people from doing that. I'm really surprised about that. And I just suggest, maybe come up with better numbers or some other way of quantifying what it is your claim is, that we have. Somebody else was in there saying that, oh, well, we have much higher violent crime. No, we don't. We've done comparisons on that too. And, we're higher than some, lesser than others, but we're still, not horrible in that department. And still, the trend is downward. Property crime is higher than it is in some other places. Like even on this rating here, it says, property crime B+. The other two are A's. So, I'm happy and one of them, the violent crime index, is an A+. Well, how can they say that You know, if that's wrong, let's sue these people. I bought my house because of information on this website, and I moved there, and it was a war zone. The violent crime was out of control. You know, they can't do that kind of thing. You know, so
that's what one of the officials said, that Cave Junction is, quote, a war zone. Really?
Yeah.
I always thought Bosnia was, but no, it's Cave Junction.
Well, and that's I think who he's referring to is Chief Hoke, and probably because in many cases when the fire department goes out to a certain situation, certain type of situation, there has to be a law enforcement officer there, or they can't engage to get their job done. And if there's a lesser presence of Josephine County Sheriff or OSP out there to fill that requirement, I can understand where somebody might get a certain impression. I'm a little bothered by this whole thing, because I think that, okay, if Josephine County Sheriff, if it's their job to take care of things that are going on out in the county, I think of most of the outlying parts of the county as being pretty sleepy little backwaters. I know the area that I live in is, that's just how it is here. Cave Junction seems to be the hotbed of all this stuff that is going on. They never mention, like, well, out in Williams, you know, there's rolling gun battles all the time out there. This isn't happening. So if there's all this crime that's taking place in Cave Junction, and the sheriff is not engaged in taking care of stuff in the city of Grants Pass, then why are they not out in Cave Junction quashing the fire here? I mean, that seems like something that they ought to be doing. And if they're milling around other parts unknown of, and really, I don't know what it is the sheriff's doing, but yeah, it just seems basic to me that if you're involved in law enforcement, you go where the crime is. And since it is not their purview, really, I mean, it is to some degree, but they already know that the GP is being handled by the pretty formidable police presence that they have there.
85% of the crime. 85% of the crime takes place in Grants Pass.
Right.
15% happens in the rest of the county. You know, there's a hotbed over in, at the moment, in Cave Junction. You know, it reminds me, and I'm really reluctant to say this, but it does remind me of when they've had the riots in some downtown places in the country, and the police backed off and just said, let them burn their own community. Is that what's happening? Really?
I don't get it. And you know, the thing is that they also have, they've got a pretty decent, neighborhood watch thing down there, but they have to work in concert with the sheriff's department. You would think that they would want to take full advantage of that. And I hate to speculate about why the sheriff would not want to do that, but I can't help it. You have to sort of think, because I've seen the sheriff act in such a way where he doesn't want to go with the numbers. He wants to go with the feeling or the perception.
That is what he said.
Right. And so I have to be sort of suspicious. Why? I mean, right now, in order for them to get the things that they want, it is better for them if something looks bad.
Yes.
And
true.
I don't like the counter incentive that is. And I hope very much that the sheriff is not doing that, because that would really, really bother me. But this whole thing has been really heavily colored by politics. That's undeniable. As we watch this here, people's politics and the people involved in law enforcement are heavily pushing this illogical narrative that they cannot back up with any tangible facts.
They don't have any. They don't, and they get really irritated when you say, "Well, where are the statistics?" And even Simon Harris says, "Well, liars lie and figures figure, or whatever it was." Yeah, hey, wait a minute. Except when you're backing up your own case, and then you keep going back to this thing. Well, we asked people if it was enough. You didn't ask them if they were willing to pay for more, and
right.
always trot that out, and it was poorly worded in the first place. But speaking of people getting up and talking about politics and turning things into a political deal, can we play this little video from a Friday night, and then we'll go on to the Lipsick meeting? Is that okay?
This guy here, you're gonna hate this guy. This guy is something else.
What a big blatherer, really, when you think about it. Okay, here we go. Here's what this guy has to say.
The first person on the list was Keith Heck, but he's not here tonight. I'm Dale Matthews. I was at the store today, and little kid was having a bit of a fit, and his mother took off her shoe and hit him in the face with it. And I thought, this reminds me of county commissioners meetings and the way we're sometimes treated by the people who are there. It's about time, I believe, for a change in our county, with the idea that, and this is my last complaint, for the rest of it's going to be solutions. Yes, I could talk about every candidate, including myself. I can, but I'm not going to do that. You want solutions. Last part is, we know what's been said at county commissioners meetings. We know we're breaking the law, and I don't care. It's the end of that time. I stand for no new taxes for 4 years. At least the first 4 years. We need a break. It's not that citizens can't put something on the ballot. Of course they can. But I'm going to stand against that. None of it for at least 4 years. And there's 4 candidates who feel that way that I know of. We just need a break. That's all. The other thing is we have a local constitution, the county charter. And in the local constitution, whether anybody likes it or not, especially the commissioners, is it says, this was put on there by the people, you will be paid as a county commissioner no more than $30,000 a year. I only know of 2 people, that's Raymond Smith and myself, who have dedicated ourselves to taking what our local constitution says and no more. Now, if the state insists you must take more, I will take more. I will pay all the taxes on it, and I will give the rest to charity, except for the $30,000 that you've said. Now, if they want to change that, there's a way to change that. But nobody's wanted to change that one. And it's because the courts got involved, because the commissioners asked them to get involved. Really? No, I will do what the charter says, what the people have said. Public safety is obviously one of our very biggest issues, right behind trusting in county government. And there's a reason that we don't. Many reasons. You already know all of those. So the people have voted many times saying, this is what we want. This is what we are asking for. 9 times since the year 2000, the people have said, no, we don't want to go down that road. Now, I was just asked yesterday by a reporter from the Courier, well, what about the 46%? I said, when you go to a basketball game and one team gets 54 and the other gets 46, do the people with 46 go home with the trophy? Is that really what you want? Well, every time you lose, except one time you lose and you still get a trophy. That's not America. He just laughed. I believe it's very important to fund the sheriff's department. We need to do it the way the people have voted. Now, there are a number of people in this room, I'm sure, who have said, well, now, we need to give more money to the sheriff. Okay. And we need to undo the vote of the people. No, that's not okay. So if the people are foolish or brilliant, this is what they've decided that they want. This is where they're going. And so the people have voted, and you may disagree and I may disagree, we're going to give money to pets, to stray cats and dogs, but not to children. Really? I don't like that, but that's their decision. So who in this room would like to stand up and say, I disapprove and we're not going to do it that way? No, it's their vote. They get to choose. And I'm going to back them up on that, at least by not trying to negate their vote or go to the governor to get her to negate their vote. I don't believe in that. We should start every meeting with an invocation. We need all the help we can get. And every meeting will be in the Ann Basker Auditorium so that you can see what's happening. No more backroom meetings. I will not participate in these secret kind of meetings. Not going to happen anymore. One of the things I do is I go to more commissioners' meetings than the commissioners go to of their own meetings. I go, and since I've started this, to more commissioners' meetings and government meetings than everybody in this room, than all the candidates combined. So can you vote for one person that's been following this? Just one person that's been following this. Here's the point. If you're a Simon Hare supporter, you might not like this. If you're not, you might. If you get one person in there that knows how to run the meeting right away, I've been doing it for 12 years, I should know how to run the meeting. If you vote for myself and for Raymond Smith, there'll be two of us. And what I'll do is Simon Hare will no longer be in the driver's seat. Would you like to drive with him? Would no longer be in the driver's seat ever again. He'll still be a commissioner, he's voted in, and we'll listen carefully to what he has to say, and then vote. He won't be the chair ever again. Sorry? Thank you very much.
Any questions for Dale?
Oh, now? Okay. Any questions now for me? Yes, sir. Yeah, up at the microphone, I assume. Right, Mike?
That's correct.
Dale, I would just like to hear some more solutions about funding, if you could. Do you have any?
Yes.
All right.
Okay. So we know that $135,000 was set aside, I don't know where it came from, and nobody knows where it came from, for water testing. And they intended to sign a 5-year contract, so which would ended up being about $650,000. Where'd that money go? In fact, the commissioner said, well, that could go to law enforcement. Why didn't it go to law enforcement? Okay, that's one. PILT, payment in lieu of taxes. That goes into the general fund. That should be going to the sheriff. Economic development funds. That's going all over the place. They actually help augment some of the department budgets. With economic development funds? Really? If it's serious and it's truly an emergency, and they say we're not having economic development in this county because the sheriff is in such an emergency, let's put economic development money into the sheriff's office. All of the economic development money. Let's make sure that he's fully funded. You know, there were a lot of people who pushed for levies. After the levy didn't pass, they weren't to be seen. But several of us got up at every meeting after that and said, hey, it's still an emergency, right? Shouldn't the sheriff be funded, right? There are a number of places, there's over $1 million in discretionary funds that could potentially go to that. It's not. Okay. So if it's truly an emergency, let's do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Dale? Just we're just going to do a couple, and because otherwise it could go all night. A couple of very quickly here.
This should have a quick answer. Actually, this gentleman right here asked me. A lot of people don't know your background. Have you had any military service or anything like that?
Right. I am currently a captain in the Air Force Auxiliary in search and rescue. I was until recently a staff officer in search and rescue for the Coast Guard Auxiliary, and I have worked for the federal government representing you folks at Voice of America and USIA Information Agency, gathering information about other countries and collating the information and figuring out trends and ways that we can go to keep the country more safe.
Mike, one more?
Very quick.
Okay. This coming week on the agenda, there is an economic development officer being discussed by the board. Do you know, have you heard about this, or do you know about it, or do they have someone set aside for it, or what? They have a pick or what?
The commissioners have not been real clear about how they're spending economic development funds. And so what they have in mind right now is to have somebody that's going to help distribute those funds. Again, I believe those funds at this emergency time, they should go to the sheriff's department. I believe in law enforcement, and I think we should do everything we can to support that. Mike, is that the end of my time, bud?
Yes, it is.
Thank you very much.
So next. right after the beginning of that video, the audio got very, very garbled for me, and I was wondering, okay, is this the video or is it my connection to you or what it is? And it went pretty much all the way through the video, and now it's with you too. So I don't know if that's what's going out or I'm assuming that it's just what I'm receiving because I'm hearing myself back right now too. So
yeah, does the law say anything about who has authority over the new money? Who decides? Is it the two commissioners or the commissioners board, or is it the governor and the commissioners? Or
no, the law is deliberately silent on that point. It's supposed to be something that it's supposed to be something that they decide within the agreement that they reach. It's supposed to give maximum latitude to these officials, elected officials, to reach an agreement that's agreed that's going to work for them. Yeah. Yeah, the intent is not to have the state come down and declare that you have reached this public safety fiscal emergency or to establish what the plan is worth. The thought was, mindset was, that I think each community is going to be able to come up with that on its own. And in that era too, the lipstick here was getting a lot of credibility for good reason, I think, because lipstick is supposed to be, when you all come together, the defendants and the prosecutors and, all coming together and judges and comparing notes and describing what really is going on. And so this was kind of done, lipstick was kind of starting to gain some credibility in that era. And we saw the $31.94 also come on during that session. Maybe I've digressed a little bit there, but I was kind of thinking at some point the lipstick would be talking about this.
right. And so as a commissioner, Keith, is that the plan if there was, let's say you go all the way through and start taking some sort of aid, emergency aid from the state, is that something the commissioners will decide, or do you think you'd use this body to gather some input on that?
You're about 8 miles down the road from where we are right now.
I'd still like to talk about it.
At mile 7, I'll be happy to. I mean, my practice has been, okay, I'm not sure what you're shaking your head for. You don't want an answer. That's good.
No, please finish.
I want to tell you that during one of those videos, by virtue of the fact that I have this solid state hard drive, I can reboot really fast. I rebooted, but it still had an issue.
Okay, I'm sorry to hear that, bud. You're coming across fairly well on this side.
Oh, okay.
You're making about as much sense as you do every night.
There is no definition in here of what constitutes a minimally adequate level of public safety services. And so I had called, I don't know if I talked to Chief Landis, I called the sheriff just asking, does DPSST have a definition of that, the Department of Public Safety Standards and Training? Do they have some rule of thumb or guideline? You need to have this many officers sworn in or per 1,000 citizens or something like that. Maybe looking for some benchmark for this group to consider. But I wasn't able to come up with any information in that regard. But that's something I would like to know. I would imagine that the FBI has a statistic out there like that. I don't know if you guys are aware of anything like that. But we might even be getting ahead of ourselves to try and determine whether or not we think there's a fiscal emergency if the governor is not interested in declaring such. Because if she's not, then this law does nothing for us.
So Ryan, it sounds like based on what you said, the first steps are to even see if our local legislators feel that license, it would take them to actually be on board to want to.
Yeah, and she's also required to consult with our sheriff. I left Sheriff Danny Long. She's also required to consult with him. So.
We know.
Yeah, but I definitely think that their input, Carl Wilson, Tony Sergeant Herman Marchleader, is something the law requires. The governor's required to get it.
Well, I think the purpose of this meeting is to try and figure out, as different organizations, obviously, this, whether we think there is a emergency here. And maybe that's just the bare bones, and then we go as an organization and say, if in fact we do that, get their opinions on it. I mean, it's very easy for me when you have a population of 55,000 people who have 0 law enforcement on duty, 0 for any hours of the day or night, that's unacceptable. That's an emergency. Simple as that.
In a normal natural disaster, the community is the one that usually contacts the governor's office and saying, we have this flood that's taking out this bridge, or we have this inundation of medical crisis, we need help. And they would contact the governor through an emergency preparedness plan and state there's an emergency, and the governor in turn would review that and make that declaration. My assumption is that this would be no differently, that if there's some circumstance here, that the commissioners, being the head of our emergency preparedness plan for the county, would be the ones to notify the governor, we have an emergency, which would trigger her contacting all those people to determine yes, there would or would not.
Could be, it's just not in the statute, could be.
I would think part of it is projecting into 2017 too, because without the SRS funds, you're looking at the county budget for public safety being reduced approximately in half. So your services would have to be reduced from where they are now to half. So that would be something too that, you know, as you're looking at the emergency, you're defining the current emergency, but you're also defining the emergency for the next biennium.
Well, and another point is, it's not just that county support will be cut in half, but when the sheriff is unable to provide services, his contract and grant revenue will also be reduced, so it'll be more than half. Because we won't, perchance, have available jail beds for federal grants, or community justice, or.
Well, and I agree that we're already there. When you look at the facts of the city having to pay an extra $1 million to keep jail beds open, to house their criminals that had nowhere to go, that you have a juvenile justice system that's closed for 4 years for kids, and just the bare minimum services there being able to maintain. That we don't have sheriff patrols. You could save $3 million right there, and you're still really minimal if you only give the sheriff $1 million for patrols. And so I think our line was $3 million ago, at least. We're already below that emergency level because we don't have basic services.
They seem to be doing all of this, talking the county down without any consideration whatsoever for the ultimate impact of such a campaign. You know, if you're going to do that sort of thing, and if you're going to create false numbers that are going to become a part of the record, they're going to start showing up on these real estate websites, and all of a sudden, you know, the number of people who want to buy real estate in this county is going to drop off. And what is your answer going to be for that then? You know,
I'll tell you what it's going to be.
Very careful about what you're doing here, people. This is criminal. Literally, this is criminal what they're talking about doing. Now, they're going to say that the numbers are completely legit. Well, I say the numbers are completely legit. They're coming up with, they're pursuing numbers that say what they want. They're not pursuing the truth in the numbers. They're pursuing numbers that substantiate the goal that they want to achieve. That's what they're doing. And that is very, very dangerous.
The question presented to each member of the board would be, do you believe we currently are or are imminently facing a public safety fiscal emergency? How's that?
Perfect. So moved.
I agree. Yes.
Yes, second.
Yes. Carl was seconded. All who agree? Aye. Aye.
Right.
All who disagree? Any abstentions?
Nate, we lost connection, so I texted him to get a response, but I haven't got one yet. So.
Okay. All right, so what I have heard you discussing is that you believe the next step is for our Board of County Commissioners to approach, and correct me if I'm misspeaking, to approach our local representatives to determine if they are in support of moving forward to the governor. Is that what you said, right?
No, it's this body go forward, not to the DCC, but to our legislators. So the legislators can take that message forward to the governor or the powers that be of Salem. That's how I understood it.
I agree that under the law, I mean, it doesn't say who needs to ask the governor to do this. It just doesn't say what can prompt the governor to want to come down here and get involved in Josephine County. It's totally silent on that. As far as we know, as far as I know, this is not on her radar. So the question that I'm thinking in my mind is, what do we do to put it on the governor's radar? And I think, I agree with you, Sheriff Daniels, the best way to do that is probably to reach out to our local legislators, Carl Wilson, Blaine Starker, and Bart Sigger, who we've all voted to represent us up in Salem in the legislature, and advise them of the vote that we had, and then see where they want to go from there. As the representatives, as our elected representatives in Salem.
Yeah, so basically this board drafting a letter heading it to each of our legislators, letting them know of our vote. And
so just one thing, and cover the statute, I agree with that. However, it takes 2 to 3 of the board to also qualify that. Wouldn't we want to have that piece too? Otherwise we.
Well, that would certainly help if she would know the answer to that.
So we would want the board to weigh in at the same time the legislators.
Well, I think we want to get to the legislators and let them help us navigate that next step, whether it's through the board or with the board, or let them help us navigate that last step.
He was so anxious and nodding so much I thought he was going to fall out of his chair. Well, I'm glad it was good for you, but I couldn't understand any of it. I understand any of it. I can hear him. Okay, but still, what I'm telling you is, I hope the audio is okay on this show, because it was long and I'm not doing it again.
Their recommendations are obviously that the county does appeal to the governor under the 753 for some fiscal relief. That's their recommendation. They are also soon, hopefully first part of next week, are going to meet with the legislators, the Carl Wilson, Herman Barshager, and Blaine Stark, and to sit down with them, because they are the ones that if those three are saying we don't support this, we might as well just forgive about the whole process in one sense, because that's in part of the 753. That's what the governor talks with and counsels with to see whether it is a local emergency.
They're part of it.
Yeah.
By the way, our other legislators, I think it's Wayne Krieger and
yeah. Used to be Tim Freeman's district. That little carve out.
Yeah, a little carve out.
It takes a little people
Dallas Hurd.
So we probably need to.
Well, they'll notify them. They'll notify them, but
Okay.
the main three are the one I just mentioned. So
I'm
anyway,
not so sure that's Lipstick's role to go to the legislators in our district. When it's really, I see the Board of Commissioners is really the outlying governing body as 753 dictates, to kind of negotiate this element with the governor and those legislators. I'm not trying to say I don't want Lipstick, but that's certainly not my charge, that they're going on behalf of the county, because only us, in my opinion, can carry that message. Because we're also one of those veto points of, if we say no, we're not doing this, it really doesn't matter what Lipstick's recommendation is. The governor can, in and of herself, right now, do something. She actually doesn't need.
she has to do something with after consulting with the local folks, after consulting with the sheriff, after consulting with a number of folks, and if they all said no, the governor's going to say, I'm sorry, there's no local support for that. I would imagine.
Right.
I can't imagine them doing anything different. But if in that process, and that's all this is trying to come up with some consensus of saying, what do these folks, so that they can advise us and say, we've cross this T and dot this I, and this is our recommendation to you. And that's all we're trying to achieve. But it was a good session. It was a good meeting. There was a lot of good back and forth as far as what can be done. But there was not a department head that was not desperately concerned about the situation.
It was unanimous. Yeah, everybody on the lip suit for it.
See, but that wasn't my requested charge. And that's not necessarily exactly what Commissioner Walker's letter to these various agencies was requesting. The thing that we need is, what would you say is a minimally adequate level of public safety for your department? What are those, you asked specifically, what are those stats that categorize us in a public safety fiscal emergency? I'm all for qualified people being in these positions, but it kind of comes back to exactly what we were talking about with the airport thing. Where's the data? And that's what Commissioner Walker is spearheading, collecting, that tells us indisputably, when the governor asks, she's going to ask that question. How do you feel like this is, and I probably don't disagree. Where's the data that backs that up?
And that is also being gathered.
Okay.
That's a longer term process than just a week notice meeting.
That's why I was kind of surprised that the lipstick were meeting so.
So this is like talking to a fireman, and as he's standing there putting out a fire in some big old burning building, you say, give me your understanding of the adequate water flow. I don't care about the adequate water flow. Let's take the buildings on fire, let's put it out. Then we'll talk about adequate water flow. All these folks are wrestling with a monster.
Right.
And they all acknowledge that. And the monster is there is a criminal justice issue in Josephine County. And they are saying that. Now, can they go back and defend it? That's what the statistics are for. But okay, good. And they're willing to do all this stuff. But as far as right now, the firemen and the police band, they're all saying, we've got a problem here. Buildings on fire. We have a crime problem. There's issues. Okay.
I don't disagree, and I can appreciate the position. But to use your analogy, if you're at the fire with the firemen, you're not talking about putting out that fire right now. You're talking about a solution that's more than a year and 4 months from even being approved by the legislature away. So I understand there's a fire going on, but at the same time, between now and that putting the fire out with whatever resources you think you can bring, that's an answer that has to be done. And frankly, in my opinion, I want that before I definitively said or made a recommendation to the board that this is our position, that there is a need. I don't disagree. I mean, we know that because of a question 2 years ago, and things haven't gotten any better, 3 years ago, that the current level of safety is not meeting the public's need. Totally get that. What's the shortcoming in meeting that need? That's I think a fundamental question we're going to have to answer. But I think, one way or the other, we're going to get that. And that's what, the January 8th letter that Commissioner Walker drafted and sent out to a lot of people. It's a good letter.
Excuse me, you said January, it's March 14th.
I mean an April 8th deadline.
The 8th deadline, I'm sorry.
April 8th. No, it's a March 14th. So it gives them a little less than a month to work on that. The other thing is I don't want a preconceived idea to determine the outcome of the statistics that we're asking for. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So they're saying that there is a problem. Now they're going to go get the statistics, and I'm sure that they have them to back them up. From what I've heard, even with the OSP, and I don't know where these other figures come from, there's been a 600% or 700% increase in the number of things that they've had to deal with. That seems anecdotally reflective of what I've heard from the community, that there's a serious problem out there, and anybody who doesn't think there is, that's what I've heard from people, is they've got to be the one person left in Josephine County that hasn't experienced some sort of
I think when we look at these data, we have to also consider the type and the source of the data we receive. There have been a lot of people quoting state police statistics and, of course, the data that I have that I'm getting from the Sheriff's Department. And sometimes they're collected in different manners and they're collected for different reasons. And the state police data are mostly bookings, those people who are booked and charged. The county data that I'm collecting are those crimes that are reported, but no one may have been arrested, charged, prosecuted, they're reported. So that's why we're gonna have to, in sending this out, getting information from different people, we'll look at why do they collect data? What data do they have? How does it apply? And because the data that is collected by the data that perhaps an ambulance company or the fire company or private companies, they collect it for purposes of providing their service. But that doesn't mean it's not valid data. It's still valid because it's valid for their purpose. They wouldn't be collecting it. So we need to look at all, that's why we did all these different sources, is to try to find the types of experiences that they're having. And sometimes they keep these very detailed and sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
So for instance, I already had a response from 911 that they don't keep track of the kinds of calls. They come in, they refer the call to the appropriate dispatcher, whatever. I said, well, break it down as however your system allows you to break it down. They keep it for a certain purpose. They have to show how many calls they get.
And maybe dispatch as opposed to 911. 911 has to call off.
Well, I thought because 911, they may be getting the calls and then they refer them to the appropriate dispatch. So I wanted to know the total calls.
Sure.
Has there been an increase in total calls? Maybe, maybe not. And,
Well, that's one thing that came up too, is that there is and this is part of the issue. How many people who have some minor criminal activity, not somebody coming out of the gunner, but they lost a chair off the front porch again. And how many of them don't even bother to call because they say, why bother? I just buy a new chair.
many don't call.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. That's part of that anecdotal. Look, we don't have any basis for it.
Because I think that almost anyone who lives out in the county, a neighborhood out in the county, my neighborhood included, there's a lot of those petty theft incidences going on. And anywhere from, your garbage cans to your firewood to, chains and ropes and tarps and things that just suddenly disappear off of your porch or out of your garage and you don't report them. You just go buy another one, and you don't report it. But when you start having burglaries and cars stolen and trailers stolen and that kind of thing, and people report that because then they file out with your insurance. They don't have a report.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for joining us.